So the first time in almost 5 months we've had NHL hockey to watch. And today, for the first time ever, we are going to do a NHL Power Rankings by division for Week 1. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe, and let's take a look at the first week of Power Rankings in the NHL. So I just want to start off saying that right off the bat as a disclaimer, this is my opinion on how the teams stack up so far based off of head-to-head matchups, specifically in the division, which we saw a decent amount of in this first week of the season, as well as certain matchups if they really obliterated a team and things like that. So basically what I'm going to look at is their overall record, which pretty much is all I'm going to do here for the first week. Their record over the past week, as well as a significant game that they played in that week. The team they played against, maybe a little bit of, a couple highlights in that game, who scored, as well as if they won or not. So, starting things off, with that said, we are taking a look at the Metropolitan Division. So, the Metro looks a little bit interesting here to start off on the first official power rankings. So I'm going to go from 8 down to 1, 7 to 1 in terms of the Central Division, but doesn't matter right now. Take a look at the Metro. At number 8, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets. 0-2-0 to start the season. They do not have a victory in their first 2 games this year. Really not the way that they would have liked to get things going. Their significant game that they had this season, probably not much of a shock to anybody, was that 7-2 loss against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Not a great performance by the Blue Jackets. The good thing was we did see Dubois get into it with Crosby, which was definitely an interesting thing and was talked about a lot this weekend. Never really see Crosby get into a fight. There must have been a red moon out that night. We never see Crosby get into fights. So that was a very interesting game. Fortunately for the Blue Jackets, though, a 7-2 loss against a divisional opponent, a team they'd probably want to consider a rival considering the playoff history they've had over the past couple of years. Definitely a little bit of a letdown in that one. So at number 7 in the power rankings in the Metro, we have the New Jersey Devils. So the Devils had very high expectations coming into this season. They pick up Nikita Gusev, PK Subban. They add a number 1 overall pick in Jack Hughes. 2 of 3 number 1 draft picks in the past 3 years, with Nico Hischier being a first overall a couple years back. And a couple of other players as well. So, being 7th in the first power rankings, again, it's still very early. It's growing pains because a lot of this team is new. This isn't, this is one of those teams that has had so much turnover. It may take a little bit of some time for the chemistry to develop and things like that. They'll tell you that's not why, but I think once things start gelling, we're going to give the Devils a pass. Not that, it's never being good 7th in your division in a power rankings. And being 0-1-1 is not a great start, especially taking a look at their significant game that they had was against it was actually kind of a toss-up because they did not play well against the Buffalo Sabres, where they were beat 7-2, and then they lose to the Winnipeg Jets in their home opener by a score of 5-4 in a shootout loss. They were up 4 goals. We saw Nikita Gusev get a goal. Jack Hughes had a couple chances in overtime. Unfortunately, the game did not end the way I would have liked to. I would have loved to see an overtime win for either of these teams, but that's not how it worked out. Blake Wheeler went off. He had an unbelievable week. Probably could have been, a top 3 star this week because of how well he played. But unfortunately for the Devils, 5-4 loss and the Buffalo game, just not a great start for the New Jersey Devils. Give them another week. I think they could easily bump this back up and turn things around over the next week. Okay, so number 6 in the power rankings, we have the Philadelphia Flyers. Again, another team like the New Jersey Devils. A decent amount of turnover on this roster. A lot of the guys are staying, but they brought in some guys like Justin Braun and a couple of, they pick up a guy, Kevin Hayes, up front, and they made some coaching decisions as well, bringing in Michel Therrien, Alain Vigneault. Definitely a different look here for the Philadelphia Flyers. Their record, 1-0-0. They only played 1 game, and they probably could be higher on this list. They did win their game. They did beat the Chicago Blackhawks 4-3. I just don't know how good the Blackhawks are at this point. I think they're going to be a very solid team, but based off of how the Blackhawks have been in the past, recent years, we're going to stay put on that game for now. So the Flyers are kind of hanging around the middle, but a lot of the teams in the Metro did so well, which makes it harder for the Flyers. But we don't have much of a sample size either, which made it difficult to move them up. Okay, so number 5 on the power rankings, we have the New York Islanders at number 5. So the Islanders are 1-1-0 to start this first week of hockey. They lost to the Washington Capitals, which was a major blow for the Islanders, specifically in this power rankings. A divisional opponent, Ilya Samsonov, came in, an unbelievable game, but unfortunately, he did end up giving up a very weird goal. But nonetheless, a very good game by Samsonov and the Washington Capitals, and we'll talk about them later on in this power ranking. So the Islanders, their significant game was a 4-1 win yesterday against the Winnipeg Jets. Patrick Laine getting the only goal for the Jets in that game, but we see some of the Islanders' depth getting goals, which was very important. See guys like Anthony Beauvillier picking up goals. You see some of the guys up front, and the back end looks very solid for the Islanders as well. Another good year. I think it's going to be a structured team again with the Islanders. The only concern that I have for the Islanders, and I could see them slipping down, what concerns me most about the Islanders is their lack of scoring. And we saw that in the first game. Didn't see that much in the second game, but no offense to the Winnipeg Jets, but that defense has a lot of issues. Josh Morrissey was injured right before the game. They had to bring in the guy they picked up on waivers. They had to bring him right in. He didn't even get to warm up before the game. So, again, I feel like this isn't the New Jersey Devils. I think some things have to gel. Varlamov looked fairly good, as well as Thomas Greiss. They both looked pretty good in their performances. So the Islanders, again, they're kind of like the Flyers. We need to see more of what they have, but I am very concerned for the Islanders about that goal scoring. As long as they could get depth scoring from guys like Beauvillier, Brassard, Cizikas, the Islanders should be okay. But number 4 in the power rankings, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are 1-1-0 to start the season. Very good Pittsburgh team. We obviously saw Sidney Crosby get in a fight the other day, and that was the standout game for me looking at the Penguins this past week. A 7-2 victory over the Columbus Blue Jackets, a team that could be seen as a rival for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Penguins played very well. Their other game, they did not play as well against the Buffalo Sabres. They did lose that one at home. Definitely not the start that they wanted, but I think Buffalo could be on the rise this year, and we'll talk about them later in the rankings. But I think Pittsburgh could be a pretty solid team this year. Again, it's very early, but I have them at number 4 in the first week of Power Rankings. Okay, so number 3. So the top 3 teams in the Metro, we are down to the New York Rangers at number 3. So who would have thought that? A year where they were probably one of the worst, if not the worst team in the Metropolitan Division. They come back. They add Artemi Panarin over the summer, Jacob Trouba, Brendan Lemieux, as well as also adding a number 2 overall pick in Capo Caco. The Rangers are 2-0-0 to start the season, and their significant win was really more of the Mika Zibanejad show your former team why they were stupid for trading you. Mika Zibanejad puts up 3 goals. He puts up a hat trick in Ottawa against the Ottawa Senators, his former team that he was traded from in the Derek Brassard trade a couple of years back. Mika Zibanejad he has been so good for the New York Rangers to start the season. Artemi Panarin already has 2 goals. Mika Zibanejad has 8 points already in 2 games, and that was the significant win. Again, it is the Ottawa Senators, but I think the Ottawa Senators are a little bit better than people give them credit for. Again, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But nonetheless, a 4-1 victory. Henrik Lundqvist seems to be back into form. He seems ready to go this year. And I think he has a little more motivation knowing that he has a pretty solid team in front of him there with the Rangers. Okay, so number 2 in our power rankings. And this could cause a little bit of controversy. But Oddly enough, I have the Washington Capitals at number 2 in the Metropolitan Division. They beat the Islanders 2-1 the other night, which was a solid victory. They're 2-0-1 to start the season, so they've already played 3 games this year. They lost to the St. Louis Blues in the season opener in St. Louis in overtime, so that's a pretty solid St. Louis team. So that was a good game. They were able to beat the Islanders in their home opener in a pretty loud stadium there at the Coliseum. And unfortunately, why I have the power rankings the way I do, they lost to the Carolina Hurricanes. And that's a perfect segue into the number 1 team in the Metropolitan Division. I have the Carolina Hurricanes. Who would have thought, excuse me, who would have thought that the Carolina Hurricanes would be the top team in the Metro in the first week of Power Rankings? Now, some people are pretty high on the Carolina Hurricanes this year, so this isn't too much of a shock to some. Not necessarily to me. I'm a little bit surprised at how well they've done to start the year, but they are 3-0-0 to start the season. Their significant win coming against the Washington Capitals, a 3-2 thrilling overtime winning game for the Hurricanes. Very, very, very solid start for the Hurricanes. The only thing that really concerns me about this team is that goaltending. Can Peter Mrazek hold up for an entire season? That was the only real issue I have with the Hurricanes coming into this. But overall, a very solid team there with Carolina. That defense looks very, very solid. You add Jay Gardner in there as well. You're able to trade Justin Falk and still have a very, very solid defense. So that's how Carolina looks. So just to recap real quick, at number 8, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets. Number 7, we have the New Jersey Devils. Number 6, we have the Philadelphia Flyers. Number 5, we've got the New York Islanders. Number 4 are the Pittsburgh Penguins. And to round out the top 3, we've got the New York Rangers at 3, the Washington Capitals at 2, and the Carolina Hurricanes leading Week 1 of the Power Rankings in the Metropolitan Division. All right, so continuing along, we are going to take a look, staying in the Eastern Conference, the Atlantic Division. Now, this is, again, kind of like the Metro. The Eastern Conference actually had a pretty good showing for themselves in the first week of the NHL season, and it shows. It was pretty difficult for some of these top teams here for me to move them up and down, but let's get into it. So, at number 8, fortunately, no surprise here, we have the Ottawa Senators, who are 0-2-0 to start the season. Not the start that the Ottawa Senators were hoping. They've got some really young guys on this team, so it's going to take a little time for them to develop and get used to the NHL game, or to get things going again. They don't have the most skilled team, but they are moving in the right direction. Unfortunately, they had a very tough game against the New York Rangers, and this was their significant game. Their game against the Rangers, where Zibanejad puts up a hat trick on them, a 4-1 loss. Watching the Senators, a standout for me in the amount of time I watched them is Craig Anderson. He just doesn't look right. Maybe I'm wrong, but the way he was, they were shooting the puck off him, and the way the puck kept going right in front. He was, had a hard time controlling the rebounds, and actually it costed him on a couple of those goals that Zibanejad had. And it seemed like the Rangers kind of had an idea: shoot it low, get it on the pads. He's very slow, moving across back and forth, and his rebound control isn't the best. It also doesn't help when your defense isn't necessarily the best in front of you, tying guys up in front of the net. He didn't really have much support, and that's a recipe for disaster, and that's why they are 0-2 to start the year. Okay, so number 7 on the power rankings. I did not expect these guys to be this low in the power rankings, but pretty much the main reason they were down so low is because of the team ahead of them, and it's their significant game. So they're 1-1-0 to start the season, and their significant loss was to the Tampa Bay Lightning, a 5-2 loss to the Bolts. They just really didn't play their best. Bobrovsky didn't look amazing. Again, the defense didn't look all that great in that game. But It's so early in the year. We're only 2 games in to sort of really judge these guys. Bobrovsky's in a new, he's in a new place. He's got to get used to everything. He has to acclimate. A lot of that Florida team has to acclimate to this team. This new environment. It's very nice down there. They'll appreciate it in December when they're not freezing their butts off. But for now, it's an adjustment that they have to get used to. And I think once these guys settle in, you look at Stroman, Brett Connolly, Nola Cherry, Sergei Bobrovsky. I mean, there are, the list goes on. They have plenty of guys that are coming up for their first time with the Florida Panthers. I expect them to move up next week. All right, so taking a look at number 6, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Not what I expected here to have the Tampa Bay Lightning at number 6, but the Tampa Bay Lightning are indeed at number 6, right above the Florida Panthers. Their record so far, they are 1-1-0 to start the year. Their win coming against the Florida Panthers, who we just talked about, a 5-2 victory over the Cats there in Florida. Really, I think it's the same kind of situation as Florida. There's just a couple of changes on this team. It was nice seeing Pat Maroon get a goal. That was nice to see. But overall, there's definitely, again, it's so early in the year, and some of the teams ahead of them have played more, which is an advantage, and they just looked better. Made it difficult for me to move them up. I expect them to move up next week. But as of right now, the sample size, they did get a win against Florida. I had to put them ahead of the Panthers. But there were a couple teams that kind of surprised me, and we'll get into them now. All right, so the next team at number 5, we have these guys, baby, the Detroit Red Wings. Number 5 in the power rankings for the Atlantic in Week 1. All I could say is stunned. They are 2-0-0 to start the season. They beat the Nashville Predators 5-3, and that was their significant game. They also beat the Dallas Stars 4-3, thanks to a couple of goals by some guy named Anthony Mantha. If he's in the waiver wire for your fantasy, make sure to see where he got picked up, because he has been picked up by now. He is an absolute stud. He's got 5 goals on the season already, 2 games in. Third star of the week, or second star of the week. This first week, unbelievable start to the season for Detroit. Is this, a forthcoming of what's to come now that Steve Yzerman's in there? He's the manager. He knows what to do with this team on a day-to-day basis. We will have to wait and see, but things look very good so far for the Detroit Red Wings, and they're starting off on the road to start this season, and I think the Detroit fans are getting a little bit excited, and I think they have good reason to. Number 4, we have the Boston Bruins, 2-0-0 to start their season, and their significant victory coming against the Dallas Stars, a 2-1 victory. I have to say that the Boston Bruins, they're not concerning me at all, but they're intriguing. I don't know how I feel about some pieces of this team, but overall, I think you've got that core that you had last year. As long as you can motivate them to, that's up to Bruce Cassidy. He has to motivate these guys, get them ready to go. We saw a couple of the depth guys scoring, for the Boston Bruins. I would expect them to be going on all cylinders. They're 2-0-0, so you can't complain much. Some of the teams ahead of them, though, really, really surprised me. They played very well. So let's get into that. So looking at number 3, we have the Montreal Canadiens. Their significant win coming over the Toronto Maple Leafs, a shootout victory, 6-5. Montreal Canadiens look very solid. Carey Price has looked unreal so far to start the year. Not in a 6-5 victory. He doesn't look like he's doing that well, but he's playing well. The Canadiens are scoring a ton of goals. Max Domi looks really great for them. Shea Weber, he has looked very good, as we said. As long as he can stay healthy, that is the key for a guy like Shea Weber, but he has been very solid. And some of those young guys, Jesperi Kotkaniemi seems to be continuing to develop, and the Canadiens look pretty solid. Okay, so number 2 on the power rankings, a team I didn't expect to be this high up this early, The Buffalo Sabres, 2-0-0 to start the season. Their significant game being a 7-2 thumping of the New Jersey Devils. Excuse me, a very solid start for the Buffalo Sabres. The thing that concerns me about Buffalo is indeed that goaltending. Can that goaltending sustain itself for the entire year? Carter Hutton, we saw, struggled at times last year, and the goalie carousel behind him. They need to stay consistent. We know what Jack Eichel can do. Can he bring that, and can he bring it to the next level? That defense looks very solid there. The rumors of Ristolainen being traded were out there because they have so much depth on the defensive side. Use that to your advantage if you're Buffalo. You've got a very solid defense, and they've had a very good start this season. They beat the Devils 7-2. They beat the Penguins 5-2. So overall, a very good start for the Buffalo Sabres. All right, so that leads us to number one in the Atlantic Division. It burns me to say this as an Islander fan, but it is the Toronto Maple Leafs. 2-0-1 to start the season. Their significant win coming 5-3 over the Ottawa Senators. You could argue that the 6-5 loss to the Montreal Canadiens was a pretty important game as well. But they've looked solid overall. They do give up a lot of goals. I've seen that. But, again, they played well against the Blue Jackets. They beat them 4-1. They beat the Ottawa Senators. And then they lost to the Canadiens. So, overall, a pretty solid start for the Maple Leafs. Things could obviously be better. But, you know what? A lot of teams have things they have to improve on, especially in the first week. Kasperi Kapanen has looked pretty solid on that second line with Mitch Marner and John Tavares. Hopefully that all keeps up. And the defense is still adjusting. The big complaint that we keep hearing out of Toronto is they don't have enough grit, and that's going to end up being a problem later on. They're not going to be able to keep up with teams, and teams are going to come in just thinking they're going to beat around this Maple Leafs team. We'll see if the skill can really override that. So just a quick recap. At number 8, we have the Ottawa Senators. Number 7, the Florida Panthers. Number 6, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Number 5, the Detroit Red Wings. Number 4, we have the Boston Bruins. Number 3, the Montreal Canadiens. Number 2, we got Buffalo. And number 1, the Toronto Maple Leafs. All right, so we're heading out west now for the second half of this Power Rankings video, as we are taking a look at the Pacific Division. So, leading things off, not what I expected. A big headline so far in the NHL news. At number 8 is the San Jose Sharks. 0-3-0 to start the season, so they have lost 3 to start the year. Not the start that San Jose would have liked. Evander Kane gets suspended because of an issue with a ref. Vegas beats these guys up. They beat them 4-1, 5-1 in the same week. And then they also lose to another Pacific Division foe in the Anaheim Ducks, a 3-1 loss in Anaheim. So, what is going on with San Jose? To be fair, Erik Karlsson was out of the lineup. His wife was giving birth, so congratulations to the Karlssons on their newborn child. But back to the hockey side, it has been an issue. Again, I don't know what it is. I think a lot of it has to do with that depth. I haven't watched a ton of San Jose yet, but one thing that did concern me looking at that roster was their lineup was not the best on the second, that lower half of the lineup in terms of the forwards, and that back end was a little concerning. They've got their top-heavy guys up front on both the offensive and defensive side, but the depth is a little bit concerning. And I think it's starting to catch up with the San Jose Sharks to start the year. Number 7, we have the Los Angeles Kings. This was tough for me because they only played one game, and it was against the Edmonton Oilers in a wacky game, a 6-5 loss to the Edmonton Oilers. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. They need some changes there in Los Angeles. They are in the midst, I would think, the midst of a rebuild, and unfortunately, things have not gone too good for the Los Angeles Kings. And again, not much sample size, so it's hard for me to move them up. It's hard for me to keep them any lower. I mean, I couldn't have put them below the Sharks, but again, the Sharks had a much bigger sample size. The Kings, the speed, the skill, and I mean, it's a matter of time before this team gets broken up, I would think. But in the meantime, we'll have to wait and see what happens. So number 6 on the power rankings in the Pacific, we have the Vancouver Canucks 0-2-0 to start the season. A 1-0 loss to the Boston Bruins was their significant game. Not a great start for the Vancouver Canucks. They seem to be struggling to score goals. That was something that I noticed. Oh, excuse me, it was a 3-0 loss to the Calgary Flames. I'm jumping ahead there. A 3-0 loss to the Calgary Flames. They also lost to the Edmonton Oilers in the season opener. So things have not gone too well to start the year for Vancouver, and they were divisional opponents as well. So power rankings, it definitely drops them off. It hurt them a little bit. The lack of scoring goals is a little bit concerning. We saw Adam Gaudette force Berchi out of the lineup. Again, it's so early, but to start off, not the best start for the Canucks. Number 5, we have the Arizona Coyotes 0-2-0. Their significant loss coming to the Boston Bruins in a 1-0 loss. We got to see Phil scoring a little bit more. They've got some really good pieces there in Arizona, but it's just not gelling yet. And I think it's a matter of time before this team starts getting going. They've got some new coaches and things like that. I think once they adjust here and there to certain things, I think the team, will be a pretty mediocre team. I think they're going to be around here most of the year. But number 5 could be better, could be worse. It's not time to panic yet, but we'll see what happens with the Arizona Coyotes. So number 4, we have the Calgary Flames 1-1-0. And no, I'm not ranking this because of their amazing jerseys. No, they got a pretty big victory over a Providence rival, and the Vancouver Canucks, a 3-0 victory over the Canucks. Again, this is a team, they're going to score some goals here and there, and that's a pretty solid game. The goaltending has looked fairly solid for Calgary to start the year. Again, could be better, could be worse, but we're only 2 games in, so the sample size is very small. But so far, so good for the Calgary Flames. Number 3 in the Pacific, we have the Edmonton Oilers starting off the season 2-0-0. So a pretty good start for the Edmonton Oilers. Their significant victory being a 3-2 victory over the Vancouver Canucks. So a conference opponent there, or a divisional rival there, an Alberta rival. It's a pretty good game there. So overall, Edmonton has looked fairly solid to start the year. Goaltending is going to be an issue, I think, again. But if Mike Smith can play as well as he did in Calgary, I think he's going to be able to keep the Oilers in it, for a pretty substantial amount of the season. Number 2, this is not what I was expecting, but I watched this team, in both games for points here and there. The Anaheim Ducks 2-0-0 to start the year. Significant victory being a 3-1 victory over the San Jose Sharks. Beating the Sharks was a big game. They also beat the Arizona Coyotes. So these are some solid wins at home for the Ducks. They did start the season at home, which is an advantage. But nonetheless, 2 divisional opponents, and they were pretty nice victories. They played solid in both games. John Gibson looks to be just as good as ever. As long as he gets the support, from defense a little bit more this year. They changed things around. They tweaked things toward the end of last season and in the offseason. So hopefully that pays dividends this year. And not much surprise here, but at number 1 in the Pacific, we have the Vegas Golden Knights 2-0-0 to start the season. Their significant victories, 5-1 victory over the San Jose Sharks and a 4-1 victory over the Sharks. A very solid start to the year. They couldn't be happier beating this is the biggest rivalry in hockey right now. Vegas and San Jose. We saw Ryan Reeves throwing shade at Evander Kane for getting pushed over by the ref. Just banter back and forth between these teams over the past, since Vegas came into the league. And the playoff performances and how things ended for Vegas last year because of San Jose. This is a very solid rivalry. And those were 2 big victories early for the Vegas Golden Knights to start the year. All right, so just to recap real quick, at number 8, we have the San Jose Sharks. Number 7, the Los Angeles Kings. Number 6, the Vancouver Canucks. Number 5, the Arizona Coyotes. Number 4, the Calgary Flames. Number 3, the Edmonton Oilers. Number 2, the Anaheim Ducks. And number 1, the Vegas Golden Knights. All right, so taking a look at the Central Division to wrap things up here. This, is a little bit surprising, but not overly surprising. It's still so early, and to be quite honest, the Western Conference did not bode too well this first week of the season. A lot of 0-2 teams, 0-3 teams. I mean, I don't know what happened with the Western Conference to start the year, but they looked a little bit off. And certain teams have respectability. They did play on the road, one of them being Winnipeg, heading to the metropolitan area to start the year. So it's a little bit more of an excuse, but nonetheless, a loss is a loss. So the Dallas Stars at number 7 to start things off, 0-3-0 to start the year. Not a great start for the Dallas Stars. They just got beat by Anthony Mantha single-handedly last night in a 4-3 loss. They got beat by the St. Louis Blues 3-2. Just not a great start for the Dallas Stars. Losing Roman Polak was definitely tough. I saw that was a tough play there against the Boston Bruins. A tough injury. Hopefully he recovers very quickly, because that defense is a little bit depleted there in Dallas. They got to figure out what they're going to do with Julius Honka. I think that's holding things back a little bit. But again, you've got some talent there. Rupe Hens has looked pretty solid. He looked pretty good in the preseason, and started the season off pretty well also. So as long as you see some of those younger guys coming in and playing some good hockey, I think Dallas will be okay, but they're just not getting the results right now. I think that will come with time. These are a couple close games. If a bounce here and there goes their way, they could at least be 1-2, if not 2-1. So the Minnesota Wild are 0-2-0 to start the season. They are 6th in the Central Division. Not a great start for the Wild. Their significant game coming against the Colorado Avalanche in a 4-2 loss. There's definitely some issues. We saw Devin Dubnyk had some pretty nice, highlight reel saves over the weekend, but it wasn't enough. There's just not enough scoring from the Wild right now. They've got some really good pieces there, but Paul Fenton might have messed things up a little bit last year, and hopefully they could just fix things up here, over the next couple of years. Bill Guerin, but not the start that you want for the Wild. They play in a tough division, which makes things even more difficult. Colorado, that's a good team there. It's just not going the way that they would like things to. Number 5 in the power rankings, we got the Chicago Blackhawks, who are 0-1-0 to start the season, a 4-3 loss against the Metro-leading Carolina Hurricanes. Not a bad start for Chicago, but we don't have much sample size on this team. They did lose to the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes look pretty solid here out of the gate so far, being 3-0. So we don't know what we have really in the Blackhawks, but in their one game, they played a respectable game against the Hurricanes, who are on fire to start the year. So the Winnipeg Jets are at number 4. The only reason they are further up than the Blackhawks is just because they have more of a sample size. I think the Winnipeg Jets are they're decent. They're pretty solid. They put up some close games in the Metro Division. They lost to the New York Rangers in a hard-fought game that ended in a shootout. A hard-fought game against the New Jersey Devils that went past 60 minutes that they lost, as well as they won. They won the game in New Jersey. And, they couldn't get things done against the Islanders to end the weekend. So it's definitely not enviable to start the weekend on the road in the Metro Division out of the time zone of Winnipeg. Definitely not the way you want things to go. But Paul Maurice said it's a chance for us to bond together and get things going. We don't have distractions. Unfortunately, they come out of here 1-2. And I think that's going to be a theme for teams coming from the West Coast to the East. The Eastern Conference, specifically in that Metro Division, some of these teams look pretty solid. I think they're going to have a hard time. So I don't think Winnipeg's the only team that's going to have these issues there. Their significant game being that electrifying loss to the New York Rangers, a 6-5 loss at the Garden. Very solid game. It's a shame that it had to end in a shootout. But nonetheless, both teams played very well. Blake Wheeler is on fire to start the year. Patrick Laine picking up a goal against the Islanders. Laurent Brossoit really turning heads right now. He's gotten the last 2 starts against the Devils and the Islanders. Connor Hellebuyck did play in the first game against the Rangers and hasn't been back since. I would expect him to play in their next game. But Laurent Brossoit is making a difficult decision for Paul Maurice. In between splitting these goaltenders, he looks very solid to start the year. So number 3 in our power rankings, this was tough to do because, again, a lot of these teams in the Pacific actually didn't look too good to start the year. But we have at number 3 the Nashville Predators, 1-1-0 to start the year. A 5-3 loss being their significant game. I did not like how they played against the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings look a little bit more solid than I think people are giving them credit for. But nonetheless, at home, losing to a team that's really in a rebuild. Definitely a little bit of a setback early in the season, kind of a reality check for the Predators. They did get a win as well to start the week, but you got to find a way to win games. And again, Detroit looks pretty solid. They seem motivated to start the year, but Nashville has a lot of expectations, and they got to figure out how to get things going there in Nashville. They have Matt Duchene. They have the assets there. They just need to be able to execute this season. So number 2 in the power rankings, you got the St. Louis Blues, who are 1-0-1 to start the year. Their big game being against the Washington Capitals, a 3-2 overtime loss thanks to Jacob Vrana in overtime, the home opener for the Blues, the season opener, and they couldn't get things done. Kind of a disappointing game at home. Raised the banner for the Stanley Cup. You have Justin Falk and a couple of other pieces being brought in, and couldn't find a way to get the victory. The Capitals look very solid this year, so they're gonna, that was a good fought game. They find a way to pick up another win in another game, which is good, but they need to keep the motivation, to keep things going, and that you're just not given a ticket to the playoffs. They need to realize that they need to play solid this year, especially in the Central Division where things could be pretty difficult, especially down to the wire. You look at some of these fringe teams, Dallas, Chicago, even Minnesota could be in the conversation if things go their way. So this could be a very solid division, and the St. Louis Blues can't fall behind. All right, so looking at number 1 here in the power rankings, for the first week in the Central, we have the Colorado Avalanche, 2-0-0 to start the season for the Avs. Their significant game being against the Calgary Flames, a 5-3 victory. The Colorado Avalanche have looked pretty solid to start the year. They get a win against the Minnesota Wild, a 4-2 victory, as well as a 5-3 win over the Calgary Flames. So some big victories to start the year for the Colorado Avalanche. Haven't watched them too much yet this year, but they look like a pretty solid team. They're the only undefeated team left in that division right now. Everybody else has already been losing. But again, nonetheless, they look like a pretty solid team. They have some really good assets. They added guys like Nazem Kadri. They've got some really good guys on the back end that are going to continue to develop, like Samuel Girard. This is a very solid team, and I think if they continue to develop, this team's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Central Division, and a division that's a little bit, on the reset. This could be a year for Colorado to really emerge. If St. Louis sees a little bit of a regression, Nashville maybe isn't as good as we thought they could be. Winnipeg may have some issues. Colorado could really take the lead in this division. They have the skill to as well. You have Mikko Rantanen, Nathan McKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog. You go up and down that lineup, a very solid group there in Colorado. All right, so just to recap real quick. So at number 7 in the Central, we have the Dallas Stars. Number 6, the Minnesota Wild. Number 5, the Chicago Blackhawks. Number 4, the Winnipeg Jets. Number 3, the Nashville Predators. Number 2, the St. Louis Blues. And number 1, the Colorado Avalanche. So that's it for the first week of the Power Rankings. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What do you think of the rankings for this week? And tell me how you like the format. Is this a good format? Is it too much, too little? Do you want more? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe as well. Check out our Instagram as well, @GoalLineHockey. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.